Coming up on The Cost of Living.
Do you know why gas prices go up in the summer? Like, do you have a sense of why that is?
I would assume that it's supply and demand.
I thought it was just a tax thing that Trudeau hiked up. I don't know.
Around this time of year, every year, pump prices seem to go up. Now, sure, it's the start of summer driving season. But is there something more going on? Hi, I'm Paul Havershrud. Welcome to The Cost of Living. Today on the show, you had questions, and we went looking for answers. It's the May-long Q&A show. Or the Victoria Day Q&A show? The May 2-4 show? Nobody actually asked a question about what we call this holiday. But you did ask about pump prices, and why at this time of year, like clockwork, gas prices seem to go up. You also wondered why so many elevators and escalators seem to be out of order. Why don't businesses just fix them? Ottawa also changed the tax rules in its latest budget. It's increasing the capital gains inclusion rate. It's become low-key controversial. And it's the kind of financial policy dispute that Tracy Johnson lives for. Because she's cool. Up first, consumers seem to be boycotting stuff left and right, including Loblaws. But how often do companies actually give boycotters what they want? Our first question today comes from Alain in Scarborough.
What's with the boycott Loblaws movement? Do boycotts like this actually work? Love your show, love your team, keep up the great work.
So, just to catch everyone up, thousands of Canadians are part of a month-long boycott of Loblaw. They're upset about the cost of food, and they think Loblaw, the country's biggest grocer, is part of the problem. Their demands include price caps, a commitment to end price gouging, and more transparency around shrinkflation. Now, these kinds of boycotts are also known as dollar voting. The idea is, if you want a company to change its behavior, hurt its bottom line. How easy is that to do? Well, first off, it depends on the size of the company. If the target is, say, a local ice cream shop, a boycott could take rallying people in a neighborhood. Trying to go after a big national brand? That's harder.
One person is not going to constitute a successful boycott. You need most of the population engaged in that boycott. First of all, to make everyone aware of the boycott is a challenge. And then even if they're aware of it, they may not agree with it. And then even if they agree with it, they may not care enough to actually participate in it.
Bradley Ruffle is an economist at McMaster University. He says the big hurdle for boycotts is coordination. Getting a large group of people to pull in the same direction isn't easy. But it is possible. When he lived in Israel, he says people were upset about food inflation. Consumers wanted to protest, so they took to Facebook and started a nationwide boycott. But they didn't go after every kind of food. Just cottage cheese.
Cottage cheese is a staple in the Israeli diet. It's a food that everyone eats, often for breakfast. And so this was a very focused boycott. Let's not buy cottage cheese. There are three main producers of cottage cheese, and it seemed to work. The boycott ended after the three main producers agreed to lower the prices of cottage cheese by 15%.
This boycott had a bunch of things going for it. It was very specific, for one. The three big cottage cheese producers also knew exactly what they had to do to end the boycott. And for consumers, giving up cottage cheese, well, not fun, wasn't really all that hard.
The fact that it was targeted to one product may be more effective than let's just target an entire chain of supermarkets. Not buying groceries from a chain where that might be the only grocer in your community is a challenge, or that might be the closest grocer to you.
Driving another 10 minutes to go to a different store is the kind of extra friction that can sink a boycott. Consumers are creatures of habit. It's hard to get us to change. But if an easy substitute is available, that's something that can help a boycott take off. Look at what happened to Bud Light. It was boycotted last year after it used Dylan Mulvaney, a transgender influencer in a social media promotion. Now, for a potential boycotter, not buying Bud Light is as easy as picking up the six-pack next to it. So this boycott achieved the holy grail. It hurts sales. It also came after Bud Light's reputation. And this is how a lot of boycotts can gain the most leverage, especially if they're going after a big brand that wants to sell to everyone, regardless of their beliefs or politics.
Economic reasoning would say that any company that has competitors and is competing for the business of consumers ought to care about its reputation. A company that's a monopoly or has a very unique product for which there's no substitute, maybe your reputation is less of a concern to you.
A bunch of factors combine to determine whether a boycott will work. The size of the company you're going after. Will you need half your neighborhood or half the country? How targeted is the boycott? And how realistic is it that a company will meet its demands? When Bradley looks at the Loblaw boycott, he's skeptical.
Huge company, large number of consumers needed all over the province, the country, to maybe make a difference, to really impact Loblaw's bottom line, and a very unfocused boycott in that let's just target Loblaw, not a specific line of products or a specific product.
Most boycotts don't actually work all that well, because getting enough people to give up something for long enough to hurt sales, that's pretty hard to do. So then why do people join? Well, a boycott may not get everything it asks for, but it can get something. A company may concede a few points just to make it all go away. And even if it doesn't,
I think we often spend our money in ways that make us feel good. So we donate to charity, we buy environmentally friendly products, we like to support the company that offers friendly service, maybe the neighborhood store. All these things I think we do with the idea that these are good choices that make us feel good. We don't really know, are they impactful or not, but they do give us this warm glow, this maybe buzz that we're doing something good, something helpful, something constructive.
most boycotts are driven by emotions. People feel something in their gut and they want to act. Social media has made it easier than ever to light a fire under people. Doritos, McDonald's, Starbucks, they're all recent targets. But sustaining that emotional energy isn't easy, especially when pumpkin spice latte season is just around the corner. So a lot of the time, a company will try to ride out the anger and hope it just goes away. So, Alain, to your question of do boycotts work? Well, they can start with a lot of sound and fury, and they can make us feel good if we participate. But do they really change things? Not that often. Third floor, ladies' hosiery. Jerry McKee in Vancouver wrote in and asked about elevators. Actually, elevators and escalators. And why they seem to be broken so often. And Jerry's a senior, and she doesn't love having to walk up a bunch of floors.
And it's rather worrisome because so many of us are seniors and we live far above the sixth floor. So would appreciate if you have any information about this.
Thanks for the question, Jerry. Ellis Cho, walking upstairs, it's not great for a lot of people.
I hear her. It's not fun. But she's not imagining things either. Elevators and escalators are out of order. A lot. But it doesn't always mean they're broken down.
You got to remember, these are very complex devices and they do require maintenance, ongoing maintenance.
Don Sanchez has been in the industry for more than 30 years. He's the president of the Canadian Elevator Contractors Association. And it varies province to province, but for the most part, he says elevators and escalators are normally serviced at least every 3 months. That's 4 times a year, and it's required by law.
Seems prudent, safety.
Yeah. We have more than 100,000 of them in Canada. More than half of them are over 20 years old. And sometimes parts are hard to come by. And the older they are, the more maintenance they need. But that doesn't always happen. So that can lead to more breakdowns.
Okay, then, so what are we talking about here? Like, how often do these breakdowns happen?
Well, I talked to one of the largest elevator companies in the country, And for them, on average, they see breakdowns about 4 times a year.
Okay, so they're getting maintained 4 times a year. You add in 4 breakdowns, that means almost every elevator and escalator in the country is out of commission at least 8 times a year?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if we just look at the breakdowns then, why is that happening so much?
Well, for escalators, it's the wear and tear. Most escalators are going nonstop, 12 to 14 hours a day. And Dawn says they take a lot of abuse.
Typically, people kicking the skirts on the escalators or hitting the stop buttons. They're more open. They're more abusable, per se.
And even if they're not broken, they could be down because someone pushed the stop button. So
they have to be manually reset. Somebody has to come with a key, manually reset, check, make sure everything's safe.
That's a lot of downtime for escalators. What about elevators? Is there a culprit there?
For elevators, most of the time, it's the doors. They open, they close hundreds of times a day, and alignments can go wonky. So when people get stuck in elevators, it's usually because the doors aren't opening or closing properly.
How often does that happen?
A lot. Thousands of people get stuck in an elevator every year. The majority of these are just small incidents.
Well, sure, and that's good, but then again, I mean, sometimes it's not. You do read stories about people getting stuck for, a while.
True. That big one happened here in Calgary about 5 years ago. It made headlines because it was the Calgary Tower. 8 people were stuck for several hours.
If that's you, if you're in there, you got to be thinking about every action movie you've ever seen. What happens if the cable snap? It's going to be like the start of the movie Speed. Can someone get Keanu in here? He needs to help us out.
Well, I talked to Rob Isabel about that very thing. He's with KJA Consultants. They make and install elevators and escalators.
I said, oh my God, like it's the Bruce Willis movies, all the cables break and the elevator goes down. That never happens because the safety factor on elevator cables is 10 to 1.
Rob says each cable is designed to be twice as strong than it needs to be, and every elevator is held up by multiple cables.
So it's a highly safe situation. All cables breaking down, elevator dropping, unheard of. And even if that happens, there's a safety mechanism that's going to prevent it from crashing. So it only happens in Hollywood.
Okay, so in the real world, elevators don't plunge. That's comforting. But they do break down.
They do. And when they're out of service, that can affect how you feel about a place. Tim Silk teaches marketing and behavioral science at UBC. He says stores want shopping to be a good experience. So when an escalator is out of order one too many times,
consumers will be really quick to judge, right? Yeah, they could wonder, why can't you get this fixed? And then they start making, an attribution to management and the quality of management, the quality of the store. And they might defect, they might boycott, they might, choose not to return.
He says a broken escalator or elevator can also send another message.
People might be questioning, do they have the money to fix it? Maybe they don't have the funds.
So a broken escalator for a business, not a great look. It's like the broken windows theory. Maybe it could be a sign of some bigger problems.
It could be taken that way. And it's super inconvenient. But elevators alone make more than 400 million trips a year in this country.
That's a lot of trips.
And that means they're going to be down a lot.
So some people are going to be taking the stairs, whether they want to or not. Thanks, Ellis. This is a question and answer show on the cost of living. I'm Paul Haberstrood.
Hi, my name is Janet Perry, and I live in Manitic, Ontario. A few days before the carbon tax increase, I noticed gas prices went up. When I went looking to find out why, I found a linked report that said it was because of the switch from winter gas to summer gas. So I'm wondering what makes summer gas more expensive. Also, is this the only reason gas prices go up in the summer, or are gas companies taking advantage of more Canadians on holiday doing road trips? Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
So technically, Janet, that's 2 questions. But, we're not pedantic like that. And they are 2 very good questions. Our producer, Danielle Nerman, also finds your timing couldn't be better.
Canadians are hanging up their parkas, breaking out their shorts and pasty legs,
and paying more at the pump. Do you know why gas prices go up in the summer? Like, do you have a sense of why that is?
I thought it was just a tax thing that Trudeau hiked up. I don't know.
I would assume that it's supply and demand.
Did you know there's a different kind of gas in the summer?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's called summer gas. And summer gas is more expensive.
Oh, well, that sucks.
Yeah, that's not fair. Because, well, we might get snow in a week. Who knows?
Patrick DeHaan is the head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy. He says every spring, refineries across North America start making summer gas. And it's a pricier formula.
There is butane in winter gasoline that is generally much cheaper of a component to blend gasoline with. And as we make a transition towards summer gasoline, that cheap butane is removed and more expensive alkylate is used in its place.
In the dead of winter, you need butane in the tank to start your car. But when the weather warms up, butane quickly vaporizes, causing smog. Summer gas doesn't evaporate as fast, so it burns cleaner.
Essentially, it's to limit air pollution during the summer months when many Canadians are on the road traveling.
Summer gas can cost between 5 and 15 cents a litre more to make. Oh, and the switch? It's not optional. Environmental laws mandate it. But the good news is, gasoline prices are seasonal.
So what goes up in the spring will go back down in the fall because we revert from a more expensive blend of gasoline to a cheaper blend. In addition, demand for gasoline is falling in the fall, and so that will help put downward pressure on prices.
The other thing that happens every summer, gas supply gets tighter. Not just because road trip season is ramping up. This is when refineries do what they call turnaround, annual maintenance.
You can't do a lot of that work in the winter. You've got to work outside, up a lot of tall towers, distillation towers.
Calgarian Dominic Michaels is a former retail manager for Shell. When maintenance ramps up, refineries are limited in how much gas they can produce.
So that actually knocks out a lot of supply for periods of time. And there's almost always some kind of a mishap will happen. Well, it's just the nature of the thing. If you plan it for 2 weeks and it turns into a month. So this happens right across North America with almost every facility.
Another thing that influences prices, competition. Dominic says every gas station is watching what Buddy across the street is doing.
They will know where their major competition is, and they'll be noting the prices, and they'll literally physically go out and look and say, okay, things are getting more competitive, we'll have to go up or down.
Pricing is a delicate balance. Too high, and customers will drive on to the next station. Too low, and things can get out of hand.
You will get a response. People will fill up. I've seen it where there's lineups to get onto the lot. They're blocking traffic. These kind of things start to happen. So all of a sudden that retailer's now out of fuel. Once you're out of fuel, you're out of business until the next load comes in.
When it costs more to fill up, a lot of people want to point the finger somewhere. And it's understandable. The big red numbers are everywhere. You see them change from the time you drive to work to when you go home. But Dominic says even if those numbers go up together, that doesn't mean gas stations are colluding on prices.
Generally, they're not. The market is so competitive that one move of even a half a cent a litre will ripple across the market, up or down. But we're all out driving around at this time of year. Everybody's looking at the price of gas, so it becomes very top of mind, and there's an awareness of what's going on. So when there's a price movement, it seems to be amplified.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Danielle Nerman.
Our final question is about changes to the tax rules. So, wonky policy discussion incoming. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Nancy from Toronto. There has been a lot of discussion lately about the increase in the capital gains inclusion rate. Can you help us get past some of the partisan views on this to better understand the economics? What is the empirical evidence on the impact of capital gains taxes on innovation and investment? And what is their impact on wealth inequality? Thank you. Love your show.
Well, thanks, Nancy. And thanks for the question. So, Tracy Johnson, capital gains taxes, lot of chatter about that right now.
So much chatter, and that's because last month's federal budget introduced a change that's going to raise the capital gains tax for many Canadians starting next month.
So before we get into Nancy's question proper, maybe it would be a good idea to define capital gains.
Okay, so it is the money that you make when you sell certain kinds of things, like a second home or an investment or your business. So say I bought a cottage for $500,000 and then sold it for $1 million. $500,000 is my capital gain. So profit's not quite the right word for it, Paul, but it is pretty close.
And the feds are raising the tax rate on that capital gain. There's a bunch of details that go into this, but basically before, half of your capital gains could be taxed. Now, for some people, it will be 2/3. And the government's thinking behind this is?
Well, the general idea is that all income should be taxed no matter how you come by it. So if you're making money earning a salary, or you're making money buying and selling stocks or rental properties, or if you get a windfall selling your cottage, then you should pay tax on it.
But what's in question here is how much tax should you pay?
That's right. And the goal is fairness, because not all forms of income are necessarily the same. And when you have different kinds of income being taxed differently, people can get inventive. We might shift our income around to lower our tax bills.
And that would not be fair to everyone because, some people know about tax shelters. Other people are like, tax shelter? I'm not going to access a tax shelter ever.
Yeah.
And in tax policy, fairness is a big deal. So the government says this tax change will mostly affect wealthy Canadians. And their argument is, hey, it's fair to ask them to pay just a bit more tax.
Yeah, that's because capital gains are overwhelmingly claimed by wealthier Canadians. Only around 10% of Canadians claim any capital gains in a given year because most people build savings in their homes or in an RRSP or in a TFSA. And all of those things are tax sheltered.
So then how many people will this affect?
So the federal government arguing that this change to the taxation of gains will only affect a very, very small percentage of wealthy Canadians because there's some nuance in the rule. Individuals will only pay more taxes when the capital gain is more than $250,000. So remember my hypothetical example of selling a cottage and making $500,000 in profit?
Yeah, of course. I was very happy for you.
Awesome. So now the tax consequences will go like this. For the first $250,000 in profit, I don't pay any extra tax. It's the same as last year. But anything over $250,000, I start to pay a higher rate of tax on that. And the federal government says that the exemption on the first $250,000 is what makes this predominantly a tax on the wealthy.
But not everyone agrees with that.
No, because that $250,000 exemption does not exist for businesses. Business owners will pay more tax on all of their capital gains when they sell their businesses starting next month. And when you put it all together, this tax increase is expected to net the federal government $19 billion over the next 5 years.
So the government is getting more tax revenue, but the pushback is coming because that tax revenue is coming through capital gains.
Absolutely, because everybody wants to think about that day they sell their business and make a whole bunch of money, and they don't want to have to pay a ton of tax on it. I think that's part of it. But this is not a debate that's just happening in Canada. Around the world, governments struggle with the right way to tax capital gains, trying to find the right balance between making sure the system is fair to everyone, while at the same time not discouraging investment or pushing people to move their assets to countries that have lower tax rates.
So they need to figure out what's fair for the economy, but also, what's fair for society.
Which is nuanced. So let's go back to my hypothetical cabin. I bought that cabin with money that I already paid income tax on. So when I sell it, how much more should I pay in taxes? This is what's called double taxation. The same thing goes with stocks and bonds. And for business owners that want to make a profit when they sell, well, they were paying tax on their earnings over the life of the company.
And business owners, this is one group that doesn't like this change.
That's right. The argument from business groups is that this will harm investment. There's less incentive to invest if you have to pay more tax. And the ripple effect would be that fewer entrepreneurs start new companies, and that will discourage innovation and business investment.
That very well may be something that we observe not just in buying machinery and equipment, but starting a new business, introducing a new piece of technology or a new idea with the goal of growing the value of that business in the future. And this does lower the returns to that activity. So I'd say that it is a valid concern. It's hard, though, to quantify how big of an effect it might be.
That is Trevor Toome. He's an economist with the University of Calgary.
So he says it's a valid concern. But do we know if it will actually stifle investment and innovation?
Yeah, when it comes to quantifying it,
I am unaware of really rigorous empirical work that connects a capital gains tax change like what we've seen in Canada to changes in the overall pace of innovation or R&D spending.
for an economist like Trevor, this tax change is fascinating because we are going to get real data to see if higher capital gains taxes actually do hurt investment and innovation. Because so far, as you mentioned, the evidence hasn't shown that happening elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, will someone actually say, hey, I'm not going to start this business because the potential profits don't offer enough incentive? Or will they decide to start that business but just do it in a different country?
Yeah, or will a doctor say, I'm going to move somewhere else to practice medicine?
Well, the government is betting that kind of stuff won't happen. They figure they can bump up the capital gains tax inclusion, get more revenue, but that investment won't be hurt.
Yeah, they want to have their cake and eat it too. So we'll see what happens. And we know that capital gains inclusion rates are always being tinkered with here and elsewhere. So probably not the last time we are going to be talking about this.
No, it won't be the last time we're talking about this as a country, Tracy. But it will be the last time you and I are talking about this because you're our executive producer. We started the show together.
We did.
And you're leaving. Not the CBC, but...
Changing jobs here at the CBC.
Tracy's becoming a bigger deal. So, Tracy, really, I just want to say, thank you for everything. There's no one else I would have rather done this with.
Oh, I agree. Thank you, Paul. It's been amazing.
That's all for this week. Thanks to everyone who called. And if you have a question about business or economics, give us a call and let us know. Our number is 1-866-550-COST. That's 1-866-550-2678. Or email costofliving@cbc.ca. The Cost of Living is produced by Daniel Nerman, Ellis Cho, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Caroline Ferris. Our executive producer, at least for a little while longer, is Tracy Johnson. I'm Paul Habersrud. Thanks for listening.